Welcome, everyone. We are in round 7 of our day here at EdCamp in room 7, and we're happy to welcome Sara Kise from Lawrence County Schools. Welcome, Sara. She's going to be talking about PACE, how to use it to guide instruction. So without further ado, I will go ahead and turn it over to you, Sara.
Okay, thank you so much. I just want to introduce what PACE is. So this is something that I implemented about 6 years ago. So this is my 7th year here at Fallsburg Elementary as principal. I taught kindergarten for 12 or 13 years, and this is my 7th year here. I got PACE actually from a local district that is neighboring to Lawrence County and kind of stole their idea and made it my own a little bit and tweaked it a little bit. So we've been doing it for a while. We've had really great results with it year after it's been implemented. And so we've seen great growth in teachers and students and in test scores. So PACE the P stands for purpose. A stands for accountability, C stands for congruency, and then the E stands for eyes on text. And so I'm going to break down each one and exactly what that means for teachers. So designing and delivering effective lessons. So what is PACE? The P is purpose, and that really is just your learning target, your I can statement. It can also be an essential question, what the teacher wants to relay to the students. Your A is your accountability, and that is your formative assessment. That is what and how you are going to assess that learning target. Your C is your congruency, and that is just your standard. And your E is your eyes on text and your engagement. And we're going to break that down a little bit deeper. That way we can see exactly what it is. So why PACE? Why did I decide to use PACE? Why do I still use PACE after 7 years? It makes my teachers dig into standards, even if they are an older teacher and they have been in the profession for many years. We are still always working on deconstructing those standards, no matter if they have taught 1 year or if they have taught 25 years. We're constantly digging into standards and making sure that we understand exactly what that standard means. So PACE helps promote that. It also helps teachers make sure that their accountability piece matches the exact standard. So when we are deconstructing standards, if we are looking at a math standard that is middle school math, sometimes that huge standard may have 2 or 3 pieces into it. So with that, and you're looking at your accountability piece, what are you trying to assess for that standard? So it really makes us look at that standard and match up to see the congruency. And that's for the teacher part. It also allows the students to know what and why they're learning. So it's setting the stage for your kiddos. As soon as they walk in, they know what their purpose is. They know how they are going to be assessed that day, what their success criteria will be. So it allows students to kind of have a roadmap of where they're going. Purpose. It says we teach kids to think about their purpose. And look, I've got this little thing where I have to scoot it over here. If they can't tell us why they are learning something, we may all need to go back and reconsider what we are doing and why we are doing it. Even as adults, if you think about if you go into a teacher's meeting or a PLC, you want to know that day what your purpose is. Because if you don't have a purpose, if you go into a PLC meeting and there's not a purpose for when you walk in, then you've lost them. In the first 2 or 3 minutes, you've lost your teachers, which are our kiddos. So it's very important that kids need to think about their purpose and understand why they are doing something. That purpose should always match your standard. And that's going into the C part, and we'll dig into that here in just a minute. But that purpose, looking at that standard and then looking at your purpose, your learning target, needs to make sure that those are matching and with the depth that they need. There is one purpose that never changes. This is kind of relates to reading. The purpose for reading is always understanding. Accountability. This is the A part of the PACE. Holding students accountable for learning is a key characteristic of effective classrooms. Students need to know, like I said earlier, their success criteria. Students need to know what they are going to be held accountable for in that class, and not necessarily the group activity or the whole group lesson, but exactly how you're going to gauge where that kid is at that time for that standard. It will also let you know what will the kids or the students need to know. Communicating the expectation for the student, explaining their success criteria, and checking for understanding. You may, if you have a time block of an hour and 15 minutes, you are constantly, a good teacher is constantly checking the temperature of the classroom, making sure kids are engaged and they are on the right track to master that accountability piece, that formative assessment that matches that standard. I talk with my hands a lot, sorry. Congruency. That is your C. Students who could identify their learning scored on average 27 percentile points higher on assessments than those who could not. So kiddos that knew exactly what they were learning before they learned it at the end scored an average of 27 percentile points higher. That's huge. The single most common barrier to sound classroom assessments is the teacher's lack of vision of appropriate achievement targets with the subject that they are supposed to teach. And we're going to dig into this here in just a little bit too, because that is exactly what we focus on a lot in PLCs. And we're going to go into that here in just a little bit, but that's a lot of our PLC work, besides the data part, is PACE and making sure that all of our pieces line up and make sure that they are congruent for everyone. The congruency, it's your standard, plain and simple. Students necessarily don't have to know what RL 3.2 is. It's more for the teacher and the evaluator. Now, I can walk into a first grade classroom and they can tell me, oh, we are on the L standard. So that means that we're doing literature. So they know what the components are, but they do not need to know what that standard means. So that's really more of a compliance piece. That is the only part, because it's making the teacher and the evaluator look at that standard and dig into it. This is your main overarching concept. It's the big standard. So if you're looking at reading, think of all the areas in reading that you're teaching, especially elementary. I'm a K-8 school, so I go from one into the other. But you think about in an elementary classroom for reading block, you have phonics, language, you have reading, you have small groups, you have so many different standards. You may teach 5 or 6 standards within a 2-hour block. However, this PACE, what we focus on is just my big standard for that day. You may dabble into many standards, but this is just the big standard that we focus on for that day. On an average day, a teacher would have 1 per day per subject. So math would have 1 and reading would have 1. That would change daily. Possibly 1 to 2 for upper grades. But the one piece is going to change is your accountability. Your accountability will change every single day because you are going to assess to see if they understand that standard. Because like I said earlier, that standard, like in math, in middle school math or middle school reading, that standard is so deep and it has so many parts and so many chunks to it. You have to really assess that differently to master that part of that standard. And so I feel like, especially with some of our younger teachers coming in, they look at a standard and they think they taught it in one day. Okay, we're good. We're going to go to the next standard. But when we start breaking down that standard and then they see, oh, well, that standard has got, they have to not only know characters, setting, and events, they think that that's all one day. So if you've got that standard, Then one day you may just assess characters. Let's see if those kindergarten kids just know characters. The next day, then we'll focus on the setting. But on middle school, that standard, that purpose may stay the same all week long. The E for reading, the E stands for eyes on text. That is actually just what you're using to teach that standard. What are you using? What are their eyes going to be on? Is it an article? Is it a close reader? Is it just a small book? What are they using? What are they using to master that standard? Good readers have one outstanding characteristic in common. They spend a significant amount of time engaged in the act of reading. What are students reading? Now, when you have pace in math, we kind of switch that, and that is the engagement. So what are they using? What are students using to master that skill in math? So that engagement, are you going to use 10 frames? Is it going to be my math, whatever curriculum you're using? Is it a game? What are you doing? What are you doing that's engagement and hands-on to master your purpose, to help you master your accountability? If I'm going too fast, you can slow me down. I'm a fast talker. So here's an example. Purpose. Ask and answer such question as who, what, where, when, why, and how to demonstrate understanding of key details in a text. So their accountability piece, so that's your standard right there, taken. RL 2.1, that is your standard. Your accountability that day for students, and this is individual. So that's something that we've actually been working on this week with my teachers. Is it an activity or is it really a formative assessment? So their accountability would be reading guide with questions. So that reading guide would have the questions that would help you answer your purpose. The congruency is just your standard. That's really for the evaluator and for the teacher. And then your eyes on text would be whole group, the red hen. And I have perfect examples like how they're using in classrooms, and I will demonstrate that too. So here's an example. So here's an actual PACE, second grade. So if you look at it, for reading, it says identify and annotate the main idea and details in an informational text. So their accountability piece is going to be annotate key details in text for close reading and the main idea by highlighting and making notes. So that's what the teacher is going to look at to see if they mastered that purpose. Their E for that, text for close reading. This is all about penguins. My eyes are getting bad. All about penguins. The math, it says I can add 2-digit numbers. The accountability piece. Model using base 10 blocks and complete independent practice number 6 through 17. I think that's what it says, 6 through 17. So that is what the teacher is looking at, are those numbers. So it's kind of like following the gradual release model. So that is kind of like the you do part. And so she is going to focus on those numbers to determine if that student mastered that purpose. And her engagement that day was just simply her curriculum, my math lesson 3.4, because that's the curriculum that we use here at Fallsburg. The next one is from 4th grade. So, and my little thing is right there, and I'm not able to see it very well here. I can't scoot it up. You can read it. I can't read the top line. It says structure an author uses to organize events, ideas, and information. So that is her purpose. This is a little different. If you look at it, you see that some of the you have underlined some words. We have been really focusing on the last 2 years our CRISA work and choosing and picking out those verbs, those words, those vocabulary words, and really breaking it down so kids will understand a text structure. Well, what is a text structure? We can assume that 4th grade students know what a text structure is, but we break it down a little bit more. So my teachers, especially my upper grades, 3rd through 8th, they have really focused in and took advantage of of these vocabulary words and these verbs and breaking it down for kids. And that was something that I didn't do previously with PACE, but after we started doing the Kise work at KEDC, they really helped me see that and the purpose for that. So her accountability for that was a text structure flip book. And their eyes on text, they were actually just making a flip book. It was about snow. The next one is third grade ELA. And you can see that she has boxed and used different colors and kind of broke it down to third grade level. I can recount stories from diverse cultures and determine the central message. So when you read that to third graders, diverse cultures is a words that may be unfamiliar. And we all know that vocabulary is a huge component of understanding our standards. So she broke it down and kind of wrote the more elementary words of it. So diverse, different. So she broke that down for kids and they can retell that purpose. Her accountability was small group collaborative conversation. And I know that that's not necessarily anything paper and pencil. And some teachers, I probably wouldn't go for this accountability piece so much, but if you have a really good teacher, they're able to monitor those conversations and listen to see if those kiddos understand that purpose. So this teacher is exceptional. You know, she'll take notes. Bobby and Billy really struggle talking about this. So I understand that I need to meet with them again. That C is just that standard. And then her E, her eyes on text, they were doing Jack and the Beanstalk. So that is a third grade. You can't really see this as well, but this is a 6th through 8th. So at my school, we have my reading teachers teaches 6th, 7th, and 8th grade ELA and math. So I just kind of wanted you to see like her organization part of this. This is ELA, but if you look at like her accountability pieces, it looks like she's got Padlet. So she just puts a question up there and students will answer, and she's able to assess all 26 kids in a matter of 2 minutes. Quick, easy accountability piece. And that's what we just kind of look at. So if I am doing a walkthrough, I'm going to go in there. I'm going to look at her accountability piece. I'm going to pull up the standard. I'm going to pull up and look at her purpose, and I'm going to see if all 3 of those meet and make sure that the congruency, I guess that's the main thing that's most important, is just that congruency in the classroom. I'll just kind of let you read over this. This is teacher testimonies. I have quite a few new teachers this year. Both of these teachers are veteran teachers. One is taught for 20 plus years. One is taught for 9 plus years. And I just asked them what PACE meant to them because they're new here. And my big thing about using PACE, I don't ever want it to be a compliant piece. I want it to be part of instruction. So if a teacher's just doing it just to satisfy me or to get a check mark on a piece of paper, then we're not doing it. I want it to be a part of instruction. And I know when I walk into a classroom if that's being done or not. I know when a teacher starts off and she spends 5 minutes breaking down vocabulary words, they're talking about it in groups. She's revisiting in the middle of a lesson. She's closing it up at the end. I know that that is real for her. Now, when they're doing it just, all right, guys, let's do the PACE, I know that it is a compliance piece. That the last quote, if you look at it, says, PACE helps to guide the direction of learning in my classroom. It sets clear expectations, guides for the students in their learning process, and keeps them engaged and focused on the learning target. It allows the student to reflect on their background knowledge in the target standard and content area. Incorporating PACE provides a learning roadmap, allowing students to self-assess what they need to know in order to achieve proficiency in that standard. So that, and I respect this teacher more than ever. So when she said that, I was like, oh yes, girl, that's exactly how I feel. And it is hard, like I said, I started doing it 7 years ago. And each year I'm getting teachers buy-in. Last year was probably the best buy-in that I've had, and I see it working tremendously. So how do I use it? And I kind of already talked about this. PLCs, we look at PACE, we analyze if purpose and accountability are congruent. And a lot of times I have teachers to jot down their PACE. My PLCs are K through second, third, fourth, and fifth, and sixth, seventh, and eighth. So I have a combined at different grades because they bring their PACE. We sit and look at it with a different grade level. So I may have a first grade teacher looking with a second grade teacher. And so we look to see if that is congruent or not. And we learn a lot. It's a time to learn. And it's okay if it doesn't. We'll kind of back it up and say, okay, how can I turn this accountability piece? How can I turn this formative assessment into matching this purpose? So we learn from it. Walkthroughs, we already kind of talked about this, but I looked at activities planned. I look at their lesson plans and determine if they're congruent and rigorous enough to meet the learning intentions. And then lesson plans, and I'm going to show you this here in just a second. Most of my teachers write their lesson plans in a PACE format. And I will show you, and let's see if I can try this real quick. We're going to do this. Let's see if we can get it here. So here, real quick, let me show you this one. Yes, so if you see, this is a kindergarten lesson plan. Now, she's got different parts that you click to get in more in depth. But if you look at reading, that is her lesson plans. But then over on the right, we're going to click and it goes deeper into her activities and stuff. But all she's doing is putting this on her board. It is mapped out for her. I'm able to go in here and look, and let me tell you, this little girl I'm using right now, she's a brand new teacher. We struggled the first 3 months. I'm going to be honest with you. And I talked to her yesterday. I was like, oh my gosh, you're amazing now. But she, if you look at just Tuesday, this is kindergarten. I can retell key events. Her accountability is draw a key event from the story. That's it. It's that simple. But these kiddos are 5. So we're able to look and see if that kid can master that purpose. And this is just an example I just wanted to show you. But I'd say all teachers, but maybe 2, write their lesson plans in a PACE format. I only ask for reading and math, though. I don't ask for the Haggerty and phonics and stuff like that. Let me go back. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and Christy says this is great, and I concur. This is really good stuff. And right here, this slide.
Thank you, Christy.
Yeah, and looking at this slide right here. So thinking about how that lesson plan and how everything, so your PLCs, everything is meshing together towards the same purpose. It's not, you don't have something different that you're doing in PLCs. You don't have some other,
right.
or at least from this, it doesn't seem like that you have some other different district walkthrough document that we're using that isn't aligned to this central purpose of PACE, and then
this is what I use.
Yeah.
This is what I use.
And and I'm also interested in thinking about how this aligns with, and this is just a question to hold out there, about how you use this to align to the Kentucky Framework for Teaching, right? For how teachers are evaluated, because this certainly does align.
Yes.
And so anyway, I'm loving this.
And that's exactly what I use to do my walkthroughs, is the framework. So I focus mostly on 3, on domain 3, and we look at each one of those. So if you look at your accountability, that's 3D all day long. Yep. And we look to see if it matches. I mean, identical to it.
Yeah.
And it just seems like when it makes it work, it seems like it's just we're on the right road. You know what I'm saying? We don't have one over here in the ditch, one up here on the hill. We are, going straight down the road and everybody's on it together. So kind of wrapping everything up is, would you use this? Like thinking about, your school, helping your teachers, how would you use it? How do you think how this would help students? And would you use it as a principal? Do you think it's beneficial for students? I know I've got a little boy that is in fourth grade. So, of course, being mom, I asked on the way home, so what was your purpose today? Just to see if we're doing it. And kids, even like, I have some teachers that even the kids will write their purpose together. So like they don't have it before. That is the beginning of their day, the beginning of their lesson. They read the big purpose, and then we go over and we choose the keywords, the vocabulary words, all of those, big words that I learned at KEDC. I see you're popping in here. I was bragging on you earlier, girl. Oh, but we make that part of instruction. We don't make it a compliance piece. We make it part of instruction and a learning tool. So having those conversations out loud, we're able to understand even, hey, my kids don't understand what diverse culture is. We need to dig into that. So it really is an eye opener too. So this was just like a time just to kind of chit chat and just see if you would use it, if you would think it would be beneficial for your teachers. Chrissy, you think you would ever use it?
Yeah, I do. I really like this and I want more information about it. I like the idea of lesson plans. That's something that our staff, could easily adapt. But I just like the simpleness of it.
Well, and here's the thing, and I think we were talking, I don't know if we was talking about this earlier or in the last session. I'm not a huge lesson plan person. I mean, I I'm just not. Because I wasn't as a teacher. Like I would have a beautiful lesson plan for Monday, and that was all gone in the wastebasket by 9:30 that day. But now I make it very individualized. So if I've got a teacher that is a rock star and her index is an 80 and she is getting, results like no other, I'm not going to ask her to write 5 lesson plans on her activities. I'm just not. Now, if there's a teacher, let's say it's kind of bare minimum and they just have the pace, and that teacher's struggling a little bit, then, during my coaching session, then I kind of, differentiate for that teacher. I'll say, hey, let's get a little bit more in depth. Like that pace is up there, but tell me what activities you are doing to actually get to that purpose, because I don't know if they're matching up. So I try to make sure that, what one first grade teacher is doing might be something else that the other first grade teacher is doing. It still all leads back to pace, but it looks a little bit different from one classroom to another based on lesson plans. But lesson plan wise, it is just so easy to just kind of glance, because really we're going to talk about activities and things during PLC. We're going to talk about, oh man, I've talked too much. Sorry. But if you have any questions, you can email me. Here's my next slide. There's my email. You're more than welcome to email me or ask any questions.
Yeah, Christy says thank you. And so do I. I really liked what you said earlier also, Sarah, and this intentional focus on the standards. And you said that you're really looking for and having those conversations with the teachers about did the activities planned and utilized, did they truly meet the depth of what the standard is asking for students to know and be able to do? So I think that that's I find, as I have visited in the past 12 years, so many different classrooms in so many different districts and states, and having that focus on effective teaching, that is one congruency, is that teachers who have that focus and also have leaders who are having conversations with them about that intentional focus on standards, they're excelling. they're excelling as teachers and their students are excelling in the subject. So yeah, excellent. Thank you for
and it
sharing.
will show, and it will show in the end. It really
Yes,
will.
yes,
It
exactly.
really will.
Thanks so much for sharing. I'm going to go ahead
You're
and stop the
welcome.
recording.